let's get into it. Uh, Coming in at 25, we got Michigan. Look, Michigan doesn't have an offense, guys, and that's not a secret. They were able to run the football, and they've been able to run the football uh, at a decent clip this year. We're going to talk more about Michigan because they've got that matchup with USC going on this week. So very shortly in this video, we're going to be talking some Michigan football. But look, Michigan was left with to pick up the pieces from winning a national championship last year and most of your entire coaching staff dispersing, a lot of the talent, especially on offense, dispersing. So Michigan finds himself at number 25, and they're going to have their hands full because they're going to be a home dog this week against USC. We'll talk about that in a minute. NIU, look, NIU has got a really good win. It is the best win in their program's history this year against Notre Dame. Notre Dame comes right back out and just fires up that old engine on offense and just runs for about 300 yards this past weekend. So, Notre Dame's got it in them to be able to generate some kind of offense, maybe not through the passing game, but NIU taking them down was a big deal, and now they're in their little conference schedule, and the odds of them losing one of these games are pretty slim. They're going to be favored in a lot of these games that they're playing the rest of the year, so we'll have to keep an eye on them. But they're kind of our like honorable mention for the non-power four teams, right? You gotta have one in there at least. As long as there's at least one to deserve it, I guess. Pitt, they're 3-0, guys. I don't think they're amazing, but they're 3-0. They just beat West Virginia in the backyard brawl. They won Daddy some money. Hello, thank you, Pitt. Picked them on the money line this past week, and I did it on the show on Thursday, and I did it in real life as well, and won Daddy some money. Kind of saved my ass this week, really, because I had some bad bets other than that. So that was well invited. Illinois, we're going to talk more about Illinois here in just a bit, guys. Admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of Illinois football. They took care of Kansas earlier this year. Fighting Illini, folks, please report to the chat or report to the comment section, and I'd like to hear what your takes are on this football team because seems like Belema has got a pretty good situation going on there in Illinois, and he's always been known for playing some rock solid football. So looking good. Iowa State, they came off their win against Iowa week before last. I believe they were off this past week. I'm not if they did play, they didn't play anybody good. But
Yeah, they were
Iowa
off.
State, yeah, lots of teams off with these 2 bye weeks, so we get these early off weeks. But Iowa State did what they needed to do in that Iowa game, and that's pretty much why they find themselves at the 21st spot. And they're a team to watch in the Big 12, as that Big 12 is going to be very, very competitive between those top 3-4 teams this year.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add on that. Michigan, we're kind of keeping them in the top 25, waiting to see if this offense is going to catch up. Davis Warren had another couple of picks last week, or I say last week, it was just yesterday. But the running game looked pretty strong. And we just have to wait and see what Michigan's going to be able to do. The Texas loss doesn't look that bad because we know Texas is really good, except for the fact that they got blown out or could have been blown out if Texas really wanted to. They took their pedal off in the second half, made it look like a somewhat competitive outcome there, but that really wasn't the case if you watch the game. NIU, yeah, honorable mention. They're in the top 25. I don't necessarily expect NIU to kind of remain at the top of the non-power 5 teams here, or non-power 4 teams. But as of right now, they have the best win of any of them. I think at this point, Memphis could be coming up into this ranking here as soon as next week potentially. We'll just have to wait and see and pay attention to kind of what happens beneath the Power 4 conference. Pitt, like you said, 3-0. Eli Holstein, the Alabama transfer at quarterback, is playing really well, and I think that they deserve to be here. It got into a backyard brawl, it looked like, this past week, and came out on top. That was really entertaining, as it always is, and kudos to them. Let's see what they can do moving forward, because that was a pretty good win there against West Virginia. Illinois, look, from everything I can tell, it seems like Luke Altmaier's got this offense going in a pretty good direction. Brett Bielema has been a great coach. I really like what he's done with the Illinois program. They kind of had a gap year last year where it was a rebuild year, and then coming into 2024 now, they're making it into the top 25. Can they give Nebraska a little bit of a run for their money here on the road? Playing in Nebraska, we'll have to wait and see. Ready to break that one down with you here in just a bit. And then the Cyclones, they have a bye week this week, so kind of remain stationary for the most part, but looking pretty good after the win over Iowa.
Yeah, let's keep going here. Notre Dame at 20. As I said, they absolutely bent Purdue over their knee and spanked them like a little baby child this past weekend. And I really hated to see that because Purdue was a team that we looked at in the offseason and felt like maybe they made some improvements, but boy, maybe it was just really bad timing. Notre Dame, came off of that embarrassing NIU loss, and they came out and showed why they are what they are. Defensively, they're really, really good. We all knew that, but offensively, they put on a rushing clinic, running for nearly 300 yards on Purdue, and man, it was pretty embarrassing. It was pretty bad. Clemson going to be facing off with NC State this week. We're going to talk more about them. Good defense. They had a nice week against App State a couple weeks ago. They've only played 2 games, so we've got a small sample size for Clemson as they've played Georgia, got blown out by Georgia, and then blew out App State 2 weeks ago. So not a lot's changed on our opinion there of Clemson. We didn't drop them out of the top 25 when they lost to Georgia. We didn't feel like they deserved it. We felt like the defense actually played pretty well in that game, especially the first half. And I think we're going to see more of that defense playing really well this week. We'll dive into that NC State matchup here shortly. Nebraska got that matchup with Illinois this week. I like everything I've seen from Nebraska. This program has done exactly what we thought that they would do this year, and that's get better, figure out ways to win football games. Last year, it seemed like they were figuring out ways to lose football games. This seems like a much, much improved roster. The freshman quarterback, Dylan Raiola, has been a breath of fresh air and quickly becoming a leader on this offense and somebody that Nebraska coaches are pointing to as an example of what more of what they need in that program to continue going towards the winning direction. I'm really excited about Nebraska, and we've got them higher than a lot of places do, and we've been that way for a little bit now, and we feel good about Nebraska. Louisville, the jury's still out. I haven't really seen them play anybody. We're going to get to see them play Georgia Tech this week, I believe, is who they're matched up with, if I'm not mistaken. It was somebody like that. They're going to have a decent little matchup this week. Not one that we're going to talk about today, but just kind of stick a pin in Louisville at this point, right? Just stick a pin in them. We'll be back to them. They're going to have some football games that we're going to be talking about this season, no doubt about it. That schedule is just a little bit slow going, as several of these teams in the top 25 have been that way. And then Oklahoma, we're going to talk about them today. They have a daunting matchup with Tennessee this week. They will be hosting Tennessee, first SEC conference matchup in Norman. So that is going to be an absolutely electric atmosphere. Going to be a night game there. So very, very excited to talk some Oklahoma football this week. We'll do that shortly. Look, they got their work cut out for them, as any team would in the nation, as they're going against the Tennessee Volunteers of the 2024 version of the Tennessee Volunteers. It's going to be an interesting matchup. But Oklahoma, I think, did what they needed to do this past week against Tulane, especially defensively. And we'll talk more about them shortly. What do you think about this group, Mason? And then you take us into the next group if you want.
Yeah, so Notre Dame at 20. This is a team that was not in our top 25 last week. Beating a Purdue team doesn't necessarily warrant you going from outside of the top 25 to inside the top 25. But this is a Notre Dame team that we know has talent, specifically on the defensive side of the football. We just needed to see the offense do something, and they did that. I know it was against Purdue, but they did it handedly and with ease for the most part. So I feel like that kind of warrants them to get back into the club. They kind of went out and proved what they were made of, and now they're back in the top 25. I think that's very fair. Clemson at 19, kind of the same thing with Notre Dame. We knew they had a good defense. We needed to see a strong outing on offense. Also scored 66 points against a team that you're supposed to beat pretty handedly. But They do that against App State, and I think that they're going to be poised to go on a little bit of a run here moving forward, get some confidence within the system, within Garrett Riley's system. Maybe Cade Klubnik kind of gets his feet under him in a sense and starts progressing little by little each week. Got a really good opportunity with a sliding NC State team this week, and like you said, we'll talk more about that soon. Nebraska kind of struggled, a little bit against University of Northern Iowa, I think it was, UNI. Kind of struggled a little bit offensively. Dylan Raiola throws his first pick of the season, but I still feel really comfortable and confident that this team is going to be able to take a step forward next week and get better. This is a very experienced, veteran-led group, and they've got a veteran coach as well, young quarterback, but with all those pieces around him, it's really kind of making him look better, and I think he's a very talented quarterback in his own right. So Nebraska is one to watch in the Big Ten this year for sure. Another team to watch in their conference is Louisville. Like Mark said, we haven't seen them face anybody yet, but we did the breakdown. We know what sort of team they have. They keep winning, but this week against Georgia Tech, we're really going to have a little bit of a better understanding of who Louisville is and whether or not they're real ACC contenders this week. And then at number 16, we got Oklahoma. Like you said, Mark, Oklahoma took care of business against Tulane, a Tulane team that played Kansas State pretty tough the week before. Kansas State favored by, I think, 9.5 points, wins by 7, kind of won late in that game. And we were kind of wondering if we would see some of the same, a similar sort of game against Tulane for Oklahoma. But Oklahoma, even though the score maybe doesn't indicate that they handled business like they did. I mean, they were up 21-0 before the half was over and really showed a strong outing on offense. That's another team that we're wondering what the offense is going to be, what that identity is. I don't think that they've arrived yet, but I do think that we're seeing indications that this is going to be a competent offense as they head into the SEC play here. They got a really tough matchup against Tennessee, but I like where they're at. I like the trajectory of this team and the projection that they're going in. Got a really tough matchup, though. We'll talk about that here soon. Moving on to number 15, LSU. What a win that was for LSU against South Carolina. I think South Carolina might even be better than we thought. Going into this game, we were looking at the Kentucky game, and we were thinking, wow, Kentucky's must be really, really bad. And not saying that they're not bad. I think that Georgia came out and laid an egg against Kentucky this past week, and kind of played their worst game. So I'm not saying Kentucky is some even a 8-4 team necessarily, but what South Carolina did against LSU kind of proved to me that South Carolina is a pretty good team, and LSU looked like they were about to just give this game up against South Carolina. They showed a little bit of poise. I thought Garrett Nussmeier looked great in this game, and he really showed some veteran leadership. And for a first-year starter at quarterback, that was really impressive to see. He put the team on his back. They win by field goal. I thought it was just an impressive win on the road in the SEC for Brian Kelly and LSU. Utah, look, where's Cam Rising, right? It's kind of like the old Where's Waldo books. Where's Cam Rising at? Still waiting to see. If he's playing, he's my pick to win the Big 12. But he had the hand laceration, wasn't able to go this past week. They throw in the backup quarterback and still handle business for the most part. I mean, the offense played pretty well. Didn't quite get the cover for me in that game. I thought that Cam Rising would be playing, but he doesn't go. Nonetheless, I think that this is a really strong Utah defense, and I feel really confident that with a healthy Cam Rising, and maybe they were resting him, for the game this week against our number 12 team, Oklahoma State. That's going to be a huge matchup for the Big 12. But Utah, like I said, they're my pick to win the Big 12 if Cam Rising's healthy. I hope we get to see him healthy in this matchup coming up this week. Another Big 12 contender, Kansas State, coming off of their best win of the season by far, coming off of Avery Johnson's best game in his career so far. Of course, they beat Arizona last Friday night, and I think that they look really impressive. They had a really great pass rush in that game, and the defense as a whole just played really well. And Avery Johnson finally has a good game, and now they're kind of headed in the right direction as they get into more conference play. That was a weird game where the Arizona game wasn't actually a conference game, but
Yeah, that was weird.
But nonetheless, a big win against a pretty good Arizona team, I would say. Maybe the jury's still out on those Wildcats. We'll wait and see on those Arizona Wildcats. But Oklahoma State, look, Alan Bowman balled out again, 5 touchdowns this past week. Oklahoma State has won the past 2 games without Ollie Gordon hardly at all. I mean, he was held to, I think it was like less than 60 yards this past week. So it's impressive to see what they're able to do with Rashad Owens and Presley at wide receiver, and then Alan Bowman slinging the rock. I really like what this offense is doing, and they've got a veteran defense on the other side of the football as well that can complement and help them stay in some ball games. So I think this is a really formidable Oklahoma State team with really good coaching as well with Mike Gundy. And then Penn State at number 11. We know Penn State's defense is good. We still have a little bit of questions about the offense. I like the offensive coordinator hire and Kotelnicki coming over. I think that this team is going to keep taking steps in the right direction as the season goes on the offensive side of the football specifically, but also on the defensive side of the football. They lost Manny Diaz at DC and lost some key pieces on the defense as well. Looks like they just reloaded. I think this is, once again, one of the best defenses in the Big Ten and really in the country. And I'm anxious to see a little bit more out of Penn State. They don't have a tough schedule this year, but we'll see. That they do have some games that they're going to be measured up against some tough opponents in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt about it. Look, LSU showed me something. The biggest thing that they showed me this past weekend was that they're able to run the football a little bit. You know, the I guess uncovered talent of Durham there at running back, kind of coming of age at the right time in this amazing football game that we watched this past Saturday. I think that helps LSU a lot. LSU needs to be able to run the football, and that's going to help balance out their offense a ton. I like Garrett Nussmeier. I got to tip my cap to the guy. I mean, it was a really gritty performance this past weekend, and just an absolute roller coaster ride, getting down by 17 points in that game and being able to get out there and lead your group. This is his first year out there, starting and going on the road in the SEC, which is completely an underrated thing to do. If you go on the road and you let a team stay in a game like Georgia did with Kentucky yesterday, guess what? The crowd is going to be breathing down your neck. The pressure is going to be on. The pressure is absolutely going to be on you. I like Utah if Cam Rising is playing. If Cam Rising's not playing, I'm fading Utah. It's as simple as that. From everything I've read, Cam Rising is supposed to be back for this matchup with Oklahoma State this week. So if that's the case, that totally changes this football game. As of right now, Oklahoma State is a favorite in that football game. We're going to talk about that one here in a few minutes. Kansas State, we just saw the best game they've played all year. Their defense played a whole heck of a lot better. You're never going to stop Tataroa McMillan, but what I really liked from this Kansas State team, he had like no yards after the catch this past week. When he caught the ball, he was tackled immediately. There was always somebody right there. There wasn't any blown assignments, anything like that. So this is the Kansas State defense that we thought we were going to see at the beginning of the season. It's taken a couple of weeks to really get going. The secondary had been pretty hit or miss early on in the season. I thought that the defense played a whole heck of a lot better. They played better on the defensive line, just way too fast for that Utah offensive line. Not Utah, Arizona offensive line this past week. And Kansas State, that was the best that that team has looked. That's the best the offense has looked. Had a couple of drop passes would be about my only complaint. A little bit of time management stuff there at halftime, obviously. Kansas State fans, you know what I'm talking about. You would have liked to kick a field goal going in halftime, didn't do it. And it was all on the first year starting quarterback there. That was all on him, and I guarantee you he'll learn from that because that was very, very embarrassing for him, I'm sure. And but it didn't cost your team, and if you can learn a lesson like that and it not cost your team a game, then you're blessed. I guess you'd say. Oklahoma State, they're going to be facing off to Utah this week, so we're going to talk more about them. But this offense is absolutely popping, and Ollie Gordon isn't the reason for it. So as soon as Ollie Gordon gets going, that's just going to make this offense that much better. The defense has actually played halfway decent this year. I'd say the defense has made a step in the right direction, it seems, so far. So we'll see. And then Penn State, I still got my questions about Penn State. Struggled with Bowling Green, already this year. I think defensively they're pretty good, but, there was a lot of loss on that defense from last year. You lost your defensive coordinator, Manny goes to Duke, and you lose a bunch of NFL talent as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think I think they're still solid defensively, but maybe not as solid as last year. I feel like that would be a stretch to say, but it's early in the year, and they've got their biggest matchups of the year coming up over the next few weeks for sure. Let's jump into the top 10. All right, this is where we have made some adjustments, guys. Last week we talked about this. I'm not going to go every little team here and go into detail. Let's get through this. But last week your comments were heard and answered accordingly. Oregon wasn't dropped far enough last week in our ranking. And going and beating Oregon State this past week, look, Oregon did exactly what they were supposed to do. But, Mason, I told you while the game was going on, I know that Oregon people, are going to hate me for saying this, but Oregon should not even play this football game anymore. And I'm going to tell you why. Beating Oregon State does absolutely nothing for the University of Oregon at this point. Oregon State is not in a Power 4 conference, right? Their Pac-12 is that it's no more. Even if you add San Diego State and whatever else, Helen Keller School for the Blind and Deaf you've added over the last week, that doesn't really change anything. And therefore, in my opinion, Oregon beating Oregon State this past weekend doesn't do anything to propel them up these rankings. In fact, moved them down because we didn't do it. We didn't do it last week, so we had some undone work that we had to finish there. Missouri slides a little bit on our list. Guys, the offense didn't look as good as what I thought it should have against Boston College, and I'll just be honest with you. I felt like Missouri had a chance to, I thought they had a chance to really kind of put the college football world on notice that Missouri hasn't played any really big games this year other than hosting Boston College, and that wasn't supposed to be a big game, but Boston College just so happened to, be able to beat Florida State and kind of climb their way into the top 25 there. So it was a top 25 win for Missouri, but I just felt like Missouri's offense is just kind of missing something right now. I'm not sure exactly what it was. Just didn't score enough points. You don't score 30 on Boston College, and to be in this top 10, I just there was a lot of questions defensively for Missouri after they lost some NFL talent last year, lost your defensive coordinator, and I've still got some of those questions, especially in the secondary. They do get 2 interceptions, but gave up a pretty good bit of yardage there to Castellanos and the Boston College Eagles. So we talked about Oregon, we talked about Missouri. USC. USC is going to be matched up with Michigan this week. Guys, USC's defense is playing the best that it's played in years. And as far as Lincoln Riley's defenses go, so far, it's very early in the season. I understand that. I don't think this is a crazy deep defense, so it's possible that this could change over the course of the year. But USC's defense has been present and accounted for in a way that they haven't in a long time. And Lincoln Riley's football teams have not been known for their defense. They've been known for their offense. Well, D'Anton Lynn was brought in from UCLA to run this defense, and I think he's doing a really good job getting these guys in position to make plays. So we're going to talk more about them, here shortly as we go into the Michigan matchup. Emmy played, another Helen Keller School for the Blind and Deaf this past weekend. They played Ball State, something called Ball State. they did what they were supposed to do. Miami looks like a really good football team. Me and Mason kind of talked about it this weekend, though. Them going out and spanking Florida doesn't seem like quite as big of an accomplishment now that we've seen Texas A&M go out and do it offensively. Now, I don't want to, Miami's given us no reason to not like what they've done, but because and obviously we have them in the top 10 here, so we obviously feel good about Miami. We just still kind of wait and see mode, I guess, a little bit, waiting for them to get a test that is adequate for their level, and we'll know more about Miami, and we'll get some of those opportunities as the season goes on, at least a few of them. Alabama at number 6, you could argue maybe they should be farther up. The struggle with South Florida is something that it can't be ignored. Just like Georgia struggling with Kentucky yesterday can't be ignored. A lot of these teams in the top 10 have had some kind of struggle bus win. Minus Texas and Ohio State. But you can't ignore it. But last week against Wisconsin, Alabama looked like the better team. They played like the better team, and they absolutely squashed Wisconsin like a bug. And this rushing offense was a nice rushing offense this past Saturday. They didn't try to be something they weren't. Ran the football for a really high clip. Jalen Milroe was able to get in on the running action. That was nice to see after not running the ball very well against South Florida. So, yeah, I feel pretty confident about 6 through 10 here. USC being probably the biggest surprise of them all for me.
Yeah, I feel really good about our numbers here, 6 through 10. Starting where you left off with Alabama, I thought it was a really impressive offensive outing for Alabama. We kind of said going into this game that, we were questioning whether or not Wisconsin could take advantage of the defense of Alabama and the inexperience in the secondary. Well, they were not able to do that, especially after Tyler Van Dyke goes out. Backup quarterback comes in, and it wasn't anything special. Sometimes you worry about a backup quarterback coming into a game. That was not the case here in this one. Against Alabama, he struggled pretty heavily. But I thought Alabama looked good. There's no reason to be concerned about this team, in my opinion. The only concern on offense that I have for Alabama is the fact that it seems like the long, methodical drives that we're used to seeing Alabama go out and execute pretty well with a few explosive plays, thrown in, or I mean more explosive than most teams. But my point is, I don't know if they're going to be able to go out and just kind of shut a game down on in a 2-minute drill or anything like that, and just kind of wear the clock down. It seems like they're really relying on the explosive plays right now on offense, and I'm wondering if they're not able to hit on those explosive plays, if it's going to come back to bite them. That can really put a lot of strain on a defense if you're not able to hit those explosive plays and score, or if you are able to hit those explosive plays and score, you kind of get into a shootout. You leave your defense out to dry. So maybe not the same type of complimentary football that we've seen from Alabama in the past. That could come back to bite them against some better teams, but we'll see here in the next game. They've got Georgia. They do get a bye this week, and then Georgia in week 5, so that'll be really interesting. Miami. Look, I think that Miami could end up being a top 4 team before it's all said and done. I just need to see them play someone really similar to Tennessee. I think that, you look at the NC State win for Tennessee as well, comparing that to Miami's win against Florida. I just feel like those are 2 bad teams, and they blew them out pretty handedly. But Miami's a team that I see creeping up into the top 5 before the season is over. USC. Really looks like Ohio State, in 2022 when, we knew that with C.J. Stroud at quarterback with Ohio State in 2021, we saw this offense and how good they were, and we said, hey man, if they could just get a defense, they'd be unstoppable. Well, then they go out and hire a new defensive coordinator, and all of a sudden in 1 year, less than a year, the defense is fixed. Something similar is going on with USC. Now, USC doesn't have the personnel, the players that that Ohio State team had, so it's going to take a little bit longer to get them going. But I think D'Anton Lynn is doing a fantastic job with this defense, and that's a big reason why they're even mentioned in the same breath with some of these other teams. It's because of the progression that they've made on defense, as well as continuing their offensive prowess in, now moving into the Big Ten. Really excited to see them get into Big Ten play here because I think that they're a really fantastic story and a fascinating team to watch at this point. Oregon, you mentioned it, beat Oregon State pretty handedly. Finally got back onto the right track, I would say. Just got to keep it going. Oregon has potential to win the national championship still. I mean, I don't take 2 bad weeks and look at that and say, well, these guys shouldn't even be in the conversation for the college football playoff or anything like that. I mean, I think that Oregon, looking at their roster, we did a full breakdown of them earlier in the offseason. I know what they've got on their roster, and we're just waiting on everything to click at once. It wasn't going to happen in week 1. I think we were kind of foolish to think that a lot of transfer players are going to come in with a new quarterback and just mesh and gel together from the start. I think we were maybe a little bit unrealistic when it came to the Oregon expectations early in the season. I think that they're back in their winning ways and are about to get going here, and get ready for a tough matchup with Ohio State in the middle of the season. That'll be here before we know it. And then at number 10, Missouri. Really like this Missouri team. I think they've got a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the football. We just didn't see a ton of that this week. I don't feel like Missouri's out of it either, as far as winning a national championship or anything like that. I think that this team is what we saw the first couple of weeks. Just got in a tough situation with going up against a tough quarterback. It seemed like Missouri kind of didn't play as fast as they normally do, and maybe that kind of limited the possessions, and caused the score to be less than maybe what it could have been. But you catch a hot team like BC at the wrong time, and sometimes mistakes like that can happen. But at the end of the day, I mean, they won pretty handedly, didn't cover, but won pretty handedly. When you look at the game as a whole. I have a little bit of questions on the defensive side of the football as well. It seemed like they weren't rushing the quarterback as well as they had in previous weeks or as well as they had last year. And then also they lose a couple of players on that secondary, and that kind of showed too with a good quarterback. They're facing a good quarterback in Castellanos, and I think that it showed a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Richard Patton, thank you for the comment, buddy. Oklahoma better get ready real fast against Tennessee. Go Big Orange. Richard, I'm sure that you are having such a good time this season, and we're going to talk some Tennessee here in just a minute. Let's jump through this last top 5 here, Mason. This isn't very surprising. There's not much. There's not a ton to talk about here. We're already going to talk about some of these teams anyway. Texas, Quinn Ewers gets hurt. Arch Manning comes in, looks amazing. Texas has looked amazing all year, did exactly what they were supposed to do against Michigan. Texas is our new number 1. Georgia struggled last week. That has to be acknowledged. I think Georgia could have been dropped farther. I think you could argue Georgia could have been put, maybe put Tennessee, up in the 2 spot, and Georgia at number 3 possibly, and scoot Ohio State down. Ohio State hasn't beat anybody this year. They haven't played any. I mean, they've won their games. They've done what they're supposed to do, but they haven't played any kind of legit competition. Georgia does have a ranked win. Texas has a ranked win there. Tennessee has a ranked win. Texas and Tennessee's and Georgia's are all 3 blowout victories. So you've got merits for 3 of these top 4 teams here. Ohio State is the one that maybe I feel like I should have moved down farther, just at least temporarily until we see them play somebody. But all in all, I still think Ohio State, just looking at their roster, coaching staff, all that stuff, all those factors, their schedule, I think they're going to be hanging around the top 5 pretty much all season. But and Ole Miss, you could say the same about Ole Miss. Haven't really played anybody. They did play Wake Forest this past weekend. They did what they were supposed to do, covered the spread there. Good teams win, great teams cover the spread. And Ole Miss and Tennessee have done a really good job of that. Georgia's done that a couple times this year, and Texas is the one that seems to be soaring at the moment. And Arch Manning certainly is the talk of the college football town. I feel good about these top 5. I feel like you could interchange a couple of them. I feel like you drop Georgia down a little farther. But we're going to have plenty of chances for. Well, I mean, Georgia's going to play two of these other teams in the top, or excuse me, three of the other teams in the top five. So we're going to see Georgia play Texas. We're going to see them play Tennessee. We're going to see them play Ole Miss. Georgia has to go to a couple of those places. So yeah, we're going to know more about these teams as the season goes on. But I feel confident about who we have in the top five. You could argue different spots for each one, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at 3, 4, and 5, and I will include Tennessee in this bunch because while I do think that the NC State win was important and impactful, during at that time in week 2, the NC State win was huge, but I don't think that NC State is as good as we thought that they were. So I would say that 3, 4, and 5 on this list, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Ole Miss, haven't played nobody. I know that's kind of like the old running joke in college football. We're going to see this week with Oklahoma, I think. I think it's a bad matchup for Oklahoma. I'll go ahead and kind of spoil that a little bit. But Tennessee's going to get their chance to against a legitimate top 25 team. If they go out and score like Power T's saying, score 50, win by 50. Yeah, they're going to be shooting up the rankings here for sure. Ole Miss, we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, yeah, they're scoring a ton of points, but I don't know that Ole Miss is necessarily playing any world beaters or anything like that. I mean, I know they're not, but I want the jury's still out to me for Ole Miss. For them to be considered a national championship contender or anything like that. I think they've got the roster to do it. Just waiting to see them really play someone of any sort of meaning or gumption. Ohio State off this week, and I think, gosh, I don't even know with their schedule when they play anybody worth anything. It might be Oregon in a couple of weeks, but we're still kind of waiting to see with them. I think that they could be after they face an Oregon if they go out and win that game handedly. I think Ohio State could be your number one team pretty soon, really, but just because of what they have on that staff and who they have players wise. Just waiting to see on them. Texas and Georgia, they've got two of the best wins. Of the top 5 at least, with Georgia beating Clemson handedly, Texas beating Michigan handedly. We don't really know what either of those teams are going to do yet. So I think that the Clemson win is probably a little bit better than the Michigan win at this point, but we haven't seen Texas struggle at all. And we saw Georgia struggle against Kentucky. That's kind of the difference there in the top 5. I understand if you want to look at the Georgia game and say, well, if my eyes don't deceive me, Georgia just struggled against a unrated or unranked team in Kentucky. And while that's true, if you watch the game, you know that Georgia probably played their worst game of the season. And it couldn't come at a better time as they head into a bye week, get ready to face Alabama. I think that Kirby will have the team geared up and focused, but Georgia very much looks like a team that could easily win or could easily lose 2 games this year. I mean, when you look at the teams that they face in Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and our number 6, Alabama, could easily be 4 top 5 teams when it's all said and done. If they split those, I would feel pretty good about that. As a Georgia fan, I would feel pretty good if they were to split those games at this point, based on what I saw yesterday against Kentucky. Texas just looks like the real deal, the total package at this point. High-flying offense, whether it's Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, doesn't really matter. This offense is rolling. Defense looks good. I don't think the defense has been challenged yet, and that's going to be the biggest question for me. If they face a team that has a true passing attack, what do they do on defense? Do they freak out, or do they play in the right position? It's my big question mark. Overall, I do think that the rushing attack or the rushing defense for Texas has been pretty good. It's been better than I expected, but nobody's challenged them over the top, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. If a team is going to get Texas, it's going to be over the top. They may not really get challenged until Georgia here in a few weeks.